It wasn't until she became a widow that, and it's interesting, it's a story that George Washington Parke Custis, her grandson, writes later on in his life in the memoirs of the Washingtons. But he talks about the Chamberlain's party, where Mrs. Chamberlain arranges for Martha Custis to meet Colonel Washington. Now, Colonel Washington's viewpoint of that story is he came there by accident. But Mrs. Chamberlain and other viewpoints are she had it arranged, that when Martha arrived, she had it arranged that she wanted to take this widow that was managing her property very well, but she's also knew that this was a mother of two very small children who was also now the mistress of this plantation, and to balance the two things in an uncomfortable world for women to play the world of men. Because, you know, Martha's education she never went to court with her father. If the father went to court, he took her brothers. She didn't know when the tobacco went into the ground or how to get the best price for it at market. All that she was learning in these years of widowhood. And with the help of Robert Carter Nicholas here of the city, who gave her the best advice possibly could be given, and that is get yourself a good overseer and don't skimp on the money you pay him. But here's this woman that's trying to manage all of this and juggle two very small children. So Mrs. Chamberlain certainly wanted to make sure that her good friend, Martha Custis, the wife of a good friend, Daniel Custis, would meet another good friend, Colonel Washington, which her husband very much knew. So she arranged for the both of them to meet at dinner. Now, Washington very clearly said, I can't stay much for dinner. I'm due here in Williamsburg to meet with Governor Dinwiddie. But he ends up staying a lot longer than he had planned to, leaving his manservant standing by the horse most of the day, while he spent it in the enjoyable company of Mrs. Custis.
And you kind of get the sense from somebody like Martha that she can kind of see through whatever kind of bravado that George Washington wants to display. You're going from being married to one of the wealthiest men in Virginia and taking over the responsibility of running his vast plantations and doing it very well, to going ahead and being associated with somebody like George Washington. And if you think about them if you think about probably what that first meeting was like, because she was fairly petite. She couldn't have been much more than 5 feet tall. George Washington is 6'4". But in terms of their life experiences, couldn't be more different in the world. She's from down here, this kind of, if we want to call it the metropolis of colonial Virginia. He spent most of his life up in the northern neck, way out from any place else. Mount Vernon at the time that he's growing up, it's got one hallway. It might have rooms on either side, maybe half a story above that. It's not the plantation you see today at all. He's nowhere near that prosperous. He's nowhere near that important in that context. But he's making his name out west and is able to become a prominent person in that respect. And so by the time they meet in Williamsburg and the time that they start courting after her first husband dies, it's sort of a marriage of equals in terms of stature. Everybody knows who Martha Custis is. Everybody knows her from her family. Everybody knows basically her history. This is somebody whom, like first ladies today, she's able to experience at the time. Everybody knows her story when they meet her. They know about her husband. They know about her children. They know about the deaths of her children. There aren't a whole lot of secrets in this particular world, which makes it a kind of a modern story for Martha Washington. And then with George Washington too, he's a major figure, and he doesn't have a lot of secrets either. And so when they meet, you get the sense that it is a matter of a meeting of equals to the same degree, if not necessarily in kind, because they both had enormous responsibilities in these different spheres, so they can meet on as equals on that level. Now, if we want to talk about what the nature of the romantic relationship was, obviously we don't know. We know there was a great deal of affection involved. I don't think we have any reason to believe that there wasn't something that ended up being in love. But to the extent of those kind of private issues, we can speculate about even the most modern of relationships today as far as how that goes. But it certainly was based upon admiration, affection, And there's no reason why we shouldn't think that it was also based upon love. She could have married anybody. Yet she chose this tall, young, fairly socially awkward guy from Northern Virginia, whose only real claim to fame was his military exploits out west. Yet he's the one she chooses, and I think that's makes a remarkable statement.